good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Richards, Technical Services Manager of the Managing General Agents Association, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our briefing this afternoon. This is being delivered by Reg Technologies on the subject of First Impressions Count, how MGAs can supercharge the agency experience. Before I introduce our presenters, I'd just like to run through a few housekeeping points. First of all, please ensure your microphone and camera are turned off. If you'd like to ask a question, feel free to use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Time allowing, these will be asked and answered at the end of the event. If we run out of time, questions will be answered post-event. The presentation is accredited for CPD points if relevant to your ongoing professional development programme. This briefing is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be issued post-event together with the slides and our feedback survey. Please take the time to complete our survey, which will take no longer than 2 minutes and enables us to deliver the best possible future events to our membership. So today's briefing is on the subject of First Impressions Count, how MGAs can supercharge the agency experience from Reg Technologies. So let me introduce you to our presenters, Paul Tasker, CEO, and Victoria Slade, Head of Sales. Paul is founder and CEO of insurance and technology businesses, including Tasker Insurance Group and Reg Technologies. Throughout his career, Paul advocated the use of technology to accelerate B2B trade in the insurance market through online trading, business intelligence, and smart process design. Victoria has a background in insurance sales, experience she brings to her current position as head of sales for SaaS company Reg Technologies. In her role, Victoria works with insurers and MGAs to help them expedite trade whilst maintaining compliance, oversight and governance. So without further ado, enjoy the briefing, everyone, and over to you, Paul.
Great, thank you very much. So I will start with sharing my screen for the presentation. If you just bear with me. Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see that, and that's nice and clear. Just a nod, Victoria. Are we all good?
Yeah, all good. Looks good to me.
Excellent. Okay, let's crack on. So, thank you very much for the introductions. Just to follow up with a little bit more detail, I'll start by introducing my colleague Victoria, who, as mentioned, has worked at Reg Technologies now for nearly 5 years, and during that time has worked extensively with MGAs and insurers on all practices of their B2B relationships. I think through Victoria's background in insurance sales, she knows only too well the processes that can be involved in terms of box checking, form filling, and lots of these sort of bureaucratic processes really get in the way. And she can really sympathise with how sometimes that can slow up the one thing that we'll really want to do, which is actually write some business. Okay. I'm Paul Tasker, 30 years plus in the Lloyd's and London insurance market. I've been involved with Lloyd's brokers, MGAs and insurance companies, but I've always focused on broker business, intermediated business. And during that time, I've seen the market move from having no regulation at all to sort of voluntary regulation. We had the GISC for some time, through to the statutory regulation in 2005 by the then FSA, and obviously now that's become the FCA. But also throughout that time, technology's moved at a pace. You know, from the early days of internet and insurance, we then saw quote engines, portals for brokers to operate in, automated modelling, the lovely aggregator sites, and more recently, you know, repetitive processing, and of course the much debated artificial intelligence. And because I've lived through that period of evolution in both technology and you know, the internet insurance and with regulation moving at a pace through that, it seems almost natural that I'm now running a technology business that's focused on improving the environment for MGAs and other insurance businesses that operate that B2B model. So I'd like to just look at the learning objectives that this session is going to achieve before we crack on. So we're focusing on covering the following objectives. You know, we're going to identify the activities that delay time to market and that increase missed opportunities. We'll look at current practices, what they are like now and how they can potentially change for the better. And we'll also look at the technology that we have now available to us that can transform that experience. And finally, we'll understand a customer-first model that can meet all the necessary requirements, but make starting a business relationship actually a fast, positive, and almost happy experience. We're pleased to be a supplier member of the MGA. We already work with a large and growing number of members. And like I say, today, it's really great to share our thoughts and hear yours on the following conundrum, which is, with all this innovation and technology over the past 20 years, why do regulated businesses still use and endure processes that are counterproductive to their aims? Are they really making it easier to do business with them? Over the next 35 minutes, we're going to be looking at how firms are missing revenue opportunities because they're hamstrung by outdated processes and routines. So prior to 2005, the general insurance market in the UK was not subject to statutory regulation. And this includes UK firms that were trading overseas. Up until that time and hundreds of years before, general insurance practitioners, while seeing themselves as professional, were pretty much self-governed by trade associations and non-mandatory codes of conduct. In the year 2000, the General Insurance Standards Council came along, which aimed to improve industry standards and consumer protection. But membership was voluntary and involved little more than writing a small check, agreeing to be bound by a code of conduct, and putting a logo on your website. That's if you had a website. I think you also got a sticker to put in your window. However, in 2005, everything changed and general insurance became subject to statutory regulation, again to ensure consumer protection, financial stability and market integrity. And authorisation was needed. It was granted by the Financial Services Authority, and that authorisation became mandatory. Subsequently, as I mentioned, the regulatory responsibility for general insurance was transferred to the Financial Conduct Authority, and they continue to oversee the sector's regulation today. Probably the biggest changes for the B2B market in 2005, when all firms had to be authorised, were client money, understanding client money, and of course the terms of business agreement. The moniker TOBA had finally arrived, and this new concept suddenly threw everyone into a bit of a spin. Effectively, a document necessary to be agreed between two regulated firms should they wish to carry out business together. Along with the need for a TOBA, authorised firms were also placed under a responsibility to ensure the other parties with whom they trade were suitable. After all, the new regulation was focused on policyholder protection. Any failure or compliance violation in a supply chain would inevitably harm the paying customer. And at a time of financial instability, the regulator was very focused to make sure that didn't happen. Most firms reacted to their new responsibilities by creating an agency application process. And this would typically follow these steps. I'm going to use the example of an MGA being approached by a broker to write some business. The MGA would typically send an agency application form. This questionnaire can sometimes run to tens of pages. I've seen some that go beyond that. But it's designed to capture all the relevant information from the broker to enable the MGA to make a decision about suitability. This could include information about directors, company financials, regulatory permissions, data protection. These forms, and as I say, I speak from experience, are weighty, inconvenient, and awkward. They can take weeks to complete because the information you need often needs to be requested from numerous sources. You have to attach evidence, often collate it or send it back to the MGA. So once received, the MGA would normally carry out an assessment of this information, and that would typically involve a series of checks to confirm the information is correct, as well as some new checks, some for commercial purposes such as a credit check, and others for regulatory and legal reasons such as sanctions screening and anti-money laundering risk assessments. Again, another laborious process adding significant time to the whole journey. It's funny that, having seen so many of these forms over the years, it's still the case that so little information is requested about the commercial opportunity. At most, these forms ask a few questions around gross premium by class. And like I say, they're usually at the end of the form with very little focus on actually what the relationship could and should look like. Anyhow, once the MGA has decided it'll issue an agency to the broker, it must decide on what terms and issue a terms of business agreement. And that document will ideally be signed by both parties prior to any insurance being transacted. The TOBA really is the key completion point in this process. It's a legally binding document between the parties, and it defines the rights and responsibilities of both and governs their relationship. So I've explained how the processes have changed a little over the years, but what real effect has this had? So Victoria, what's your view of that and of the market at the moment? Do these processes and obligations get in the way of people doing business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, hello everyone. I think all of those points before, I'm sure lots of you here on this call will resonate with, I'm sure all too familiar. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I myself speak to insurance companies across the market on a regular basis, and it's almost certainly a huge and critical issue, with it typically taking around 90 days to open an agency application. So brokers want to create new relationships, but often decide not to, as processes just take far too long, which we know in turn means missed revenue opportunities. We actually carried out some extensive market research on this topic and found that almost 70% of brokers felt that regulatory and statutory obligations slow down starting new business relationships, but 77% of insurers and MGAs don't agree. So both groups rely on each other, and brokers wanting to offer business to access new supply, insurers and MGAs could be missing opportunities by promoting slow processes and hard to meet demands on brokers.
Great, thank you very much. And, we've read a lot lately about minimum levels of support. As a broker of old, it was something that I was often faced with, questioned, and I can see it from both sides. But often the burden of regulatory oversight, agency management costs are cited as a reason for this. Mm-hmm. Do you think some brokers are working with their hands tied?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's clear that firms will limit their numbers of agencies simply because the process to open and administer them is slow and costly. Certainly from my own discussions with the market, businesses are actually having to reduce the number of agencies they partner with because of the time it takes to onboard and maintain those relationships. Again, as part of our research, we found that over half of insurers prefer to work with existing relationships, and 1/3 insist on minimum levels of support to cover their costs. Brokers, however, are more open to considering new suppliers, but half of them struggle to commit to minimum support levels. On average, we found that 45% of all respondents felt that agency application processes could be a lot faster, which I'm sure is not a surprise to lots of you here.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And, obviously being a technology business, I can't avoid looking at this, which still makes me smile for sometimes. But I've mentioned that use of technology seems to have evolved little. What are people using to manage these processes?
Yeah, so I think that, again, with our research, it showed that spreadsheets and folders, which, as we'll know, have gradually replaced paper, are the dominant technology for agency management. CRM software and policy admin systems, which I'm sure we all use, and whilst they are slightly more dynamic than spreadsheets, they're of course not fit for purpose. So reg tech solutions are used by a small minority, with brokers and intermediaries seemingly more reluctant in acquirement. Now, we have found, and certainly that the adoption of this is slow, the focused solutions, and what that means is cost and time remain a debilitating factor to growing trade.
Great, thank you very much. So where we are now, thank you, Victoria. In short, little has evolved since 2005 when these challenges, some say burdens, came our way. But I accept that some businesses have enhanced their processes in certain ways to make things faster. I do accept that. Unfortunately, though, some of these enhancements have resulted in, as we looked at, needing to limit the number of brokers you can trade with, or limiting distribution costs. Some involve significant increases in cost, and some, let's face it, involve cutting corners, which obviously can leave businesses exposed to legal and regulatory risk. I'll just leave on the one thought there, our research showed staggeringly that the average time to set up an agency is 90 days. It's fair to say MGAs, however, consider them a much more contemporary bunch than their insurer and Lloyd's peers. In fact, most of them were born into the internet world, which is a good start, and also the world of statutory regulation. Just having a look through some of the MGA websites, and I'm struck with proclamations of excellent service, agility and innovation, very positive, happy, welcoming websites. However, it's rare to find a call to action other than contact us. It's rare to find details of how I can open an agency, what it involves and how long it will take. Most sites have lots of information about risk appetite, but very little about partner appetite. So as a visitor, I find myself still clicking on that request a call link or contact us form, knowing that after the briefest of introductions, that soul-sucking application form is the next thing that's going to be coming my way. So is this really still the best first impression you can give as an MGA to a potential trading partner? We all want a multi-million-dollar account that's running profitably. If it takes 2 or 3 months to get into business, you've missed a lot of income from that account. Even worse, maybe someone else has got there before you. And you may have noticed from the growing number of your co-members of the MGAA, there are more and more of you out there. Competition is high, it's increasing. And new firms are almost always tech driven from the ground up. Okay? New firms understand customer journeys, they understand how to streamline processes, and they understand how to get into business faster. They use terms like onboarding to guide their applicants through a positive experience of establishing an agency. And they do that without compromising their legal or regulatory responsibilities. What's more, your customer base is more tech savvy than ever. More and more of the brokers you do business with showing you business were born in the internet age, and they've been part of an on-demand economy for decades now. The fact is more people want more things more quickly than ever before. So my point is, why put yourself at a disadvantage? Why start the race in last place when you could be in pole position? So let me tell you how the front runners are doing things, not just in insurance agencies, but in many other B2B sectors throughout the financial services sector. Firstly, let's talk data. Okay, it's defined as facts and statistics collected together for reference or analysis. Our application forms are merely collecting data, okay, but they're collecting it from an unverified source. At the end of the day, if anyone's going to fib on an application form, it's going to be the person completing it. Now, if this wasn't true, why do we then spend so much time checking the answers and verifying the responses? We're asking applicants to provide evidence. Why are we treating them as untrustworthy in the very first step of a relationship that we want to be based on the complete opposite? Why are we doing these things when we can already acquire the verified data? And some RegTech companies do just this. They obtain business intelligence data, information from multiple sources, and they can collate that to build a reliable and verified profile of any business without even needing to make contact. Smart software locates the names of the people in the business, checks their legitimacy, their legal status, checks their AML risks, even if they have any negative press. These software engines link people and firms together and carry out checks on financial adequacy, reputation, licenses. They even create a risk assessment based on the user's specification. And they do this in seconds. Okay. This is the game changer. It removes the need for nearly every question on an agency application form. It removes the need for laborious checking. It removes the delays. It also allows information exchange to focus on the commercial aspects of the proposed relationship. More time to look at classes of business, people, prior performance, market conditions, and how the new partners can work together and build a really mutually successful relationship. And of course, with the verified data and a completed risk assessment, software can easily issue a terms of business agreement, but to the right person at the right company. It'll even chase it up for you and file it when it comes back. But take this a step further. Think about using the data to help you choose your next partner. That's right. Okay, imagine looking to launch a new product or enter a new geography or build your distribution. Imagine being able to access a list of potential partners, brokers, knowing that they all already meet your requirements. Imagine taking your business to them, knowing that they're pre-approved. Imagine you can tell them you can start trading today. So the benefits are clear. Taking a process that we already know frustrates business growth, making it faster, smarter and safer, creates a great first impression to your potential new partners. It gives you both a faster route to trading, to writing business, and focusing on the profitable growth of the portfolio. Increased speed also comes with reduced cost, not just in the data itself, but in your people no longer having to collate, compile and check data, but instead acting on it, avoiding risk whilst building business. This is an opportunity to rethink minimum levels of support and restrictions on distribution channel numbers. It's an opportunity to stop doing what we've always done simply because we've always done it that way. By automating routine tasks, we can create time to train and develop our people to help them progress professionally. Now, clearly, the digitization of data avoids waste. Obviously, it saves paper, printing, postage, reduces carbon footprints. And whilst I appreciate so many processes are now already carried out by email, the world needs to operate in a secure and confidential solution that protects data and demonstrates high level of governance relating to, that can be shown to demonstrate to regulators and other stakeholders. It's no longer sufficient to hold business data in email folders. And of course, helping to combat the continual rise of financial crime and market abuse can only benefit the end user, the policyholder. After all, that's what this was all about from the start. The data that you use to assess the suitability of a trading partner is very current, but it also goes stale very quickly. Now, some firms recheck this data periodically, usually annually, by which time it's often too late. It's not unusual for us to first recognise distress in a business by reading about it in the insurance press. That's why RegTech solutions can be configured to continually check the profile data of your brokers, your counterparties, monitoring on an ongoing basis for any change, deterioration or non-compliance that could put you at risk, and alerting you proactively so you can take a positive approach to governance, risk and control. And as things change, new data needs to be collected, whether it's for fair pricing, consumer duty, or indeed anything else that's going to be coming our way. RegTech can provide the tools for you to collect this data from your connections, to curate the data, to risk assess it, and to do that for one or for many thousands of firms at a time. And finally, if any of this necessitates an update to TOBAs, as does or did Insurance Act, GDPR, fair pricing, consumer duty, that's happening all the time. If that's necessary, a tech solution can do that for you without the need for a mail merge, a spreadsheet, or an email. So in summary, the MGA market is competitive. MGA numbers are growing while broker numbers are dwindling. Many firms are looking to expand geographically, but are hampered by a lack of knowledge when it comes to business intelligence, data acquisition and assessment. To maintain share and to look to grow, MGAs need to stand out from an onboarding standpoint. They need brokers to want to choose them. They need to take their products to brokers and to start trading immediately. Ultimately, MGAs that don't move with the times could be left behind. Okay, they could miss revenue opportunities because we largely sell annual policies and work on portfolios, it's often the case you only get one bite of the cherry. But the good news is tech is cheaper, more effective, more out of the box than it's ever been. You know, in a market obsessed with artificial intelligence at the moment, it seems still so strange that we still use so many antiquated processes and old technology applications, and that frustrated trade is still part of the landscape. So in summary, returning to the learning objectives of this session, we've identified the challenges and the status quo and how MGAs can use RegTech to get an edge. We've considered why we always do what we always did, and also looked at how we can change things for the better. And we've looked at how RegTech can help this, not just now, but turning the agency application process on its head. And importantly, how it's possible to build business by making it easier to do business without compromising legal and regulatory responsibilities. I'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation and to throw open the floor to anyone who may have any questions at this time.
Everyone, feel free to either use the chat facility or indeed come off mute if you'd like to, just to ask a question. Oh, there we go. We've got one that's just come in. Do you think the compliance responsibilities for insurance companies will ever get lighter? That's from Zoe Parsons.
Okay, yeah. Well, very good question. I think anyone working in the market would like to hope so. But I think unfortunately it is going to be hope. Ultimately, the regulations are there to protect people. And in a world where we are continually seeing rises in fraud, money laundering, cybercrime, regardless of whether economies want to make trade simpler by relaxing regulation, all the time that those risks are there will need to be a responsibility placed on businesses to combat these risks. But I don't necessarily think that's a problem because, as we've seen, we've looked at a little part of what we will do in the insurance market. There are so many tech solutions available that help firms combat these risks, meet their obligations to regulators, remain compliant without needing to compromise their general activities. So I think the people you hear wandering around wishing for things to get more relaxed are probably living very much in a past of pre-regulation that I don't see coming back all the time those risks are existing.
Nothing else seems to be coming in, so you obviously covered all the bases there, Paul, so thank you for the great presentation, really enjoyed it. Do either you or Victoria have any last words you'd just like to add?
No, I mean, ultimately, when we're here to help, we're here to make business easier. We're independent people. I'm happy to chat with anyone about any plans they've got, questions they've got, reach out, and happy to help. Like I say, we're a supplier member of the MGAA. Our purpose in that respect is to support the members, and by being involved in this, which thank you for asking us, and obviously we'll be at the conference and exhibition. That's what we're there to do. So reach out through those channels or directly if anything springs to mind.
Great, terrific, thank you. So thanks again for your presentation, Paul and Victoria, much appreciated. And thanks also to everyone for joining us this afternoon. Please don't forget to provide your feedback and look out for forthcoming MGAA events. Hope you have a productive afternoon. Thanks again for joining us and see you all soon.